So what can a still life convey? Based on everything that we've seen so far, what can we say through a still life, and how can we say that? So, in class, we talked about that one of the things that we could do is we could definitely convey a story about a person. So we could talk about a person. We could talk a little bit about their character. Okay. We could talk a little bit about their likes and their interests. Now, this person isn't necessarily just somebody else. It could be us, right? So, excuse my writing. Okay, so we could convey something about a person, about their life, a character, likes, interests. You know, we could say things about their own personal history. Okay, we could say things about their opinions, what they're like, so on and so forth. Okay, we could convey our own personal interests as well, such as our hobbies. Okay, things that we like to do. So again, those are interests, but those can also be looked at as activities. We could look at and convey people's personal beliefs, so what they believe in. Okay, this could be something that, you know, people typically think of religious beliefs, but there's other beliefs as well. So for example, like the belief in ghosts. Awesome. Okay, you could also talk about politics and make a statement. So you could be political. Okay, you could convey so many different things. So what are you going to be conveying? That's the question. What are you going to be doing through your personal still life? So this is what you're going to be doing. So what I'm asking you to do is you are going to be actually conveying a personal still life which depicts, and you get to choose, an interest or hobby of yours. Maybe a special place you visited. Okay, something interesting about yourself, or maybe a story about you or someone else you are close to. Okay, now how are you going to be creating this? That's the question. That's where you're going to start right now, which is your brainstorming, your theme and idea. And then you can be able to identify objects that you are going to be bringing in, and then actually bring in those objects. Now remember, this is a still life, so it needs to be real objects. We can't be working off of a picture. At this stage, if I were to give you a picture, you should be pretty good at drawing it. Now we need to look at the three-dimensional form itself. Then once the objects are in, we're going to construct our still life, and then we're going to establish a composition via sketching, and then we're going to draw it. So here you're going to be coming up with your ideas. You're going to brainstorm. And what you're going to have to do is make a list of at least 10 possible ideas. These are all possibilities. So the class came up with a couple things based on what they know about me for me. So one of the first that they came up with is knowing that I do actually enjoy archery. I'm an archer. That was the first thing. One of the other things that students came up with is, well, I'm an artist, so yes, I should like art, right? And I do. Okay, other things that they came up with is the fact that I do love soccer. Some of the students remembered that I used to be a wrestler, so wrestling is a big part of me. Okay, I am a father, and I make dad jokes all the time, which then brings me to my sense of humor. Okay, so that's something that they came up with for me. Also, part of me being a father is that I do care a lot about my son, so I could do something about my sons. I could do stuff about my family. Okay, I love to travel, so I could do those kinds of things. I could do something about traveling. Something that they didn't know, but I eventually shared, is that I do love to ride my motorcycle. Okay, then there's also the fact that I love to eat. Eating is good, and that is different than the fact that I enjoy cooking. I don't like to bake, but I do actually cook. Okay, so those are the kinds of things that I enjoy. So if you notice, almost forgot, right? My culture. Okay, I am, first in my family to be born here in the United States, so that's something that's important to me. Also, my heritage, which is different than my culture. Okay, so you can see we came up with 14 ideas for me, and notice how I did not say no to anything. I basically wrote things down. Oh, I got another idea that we talked about in class, is that I actually don't like cats. I hate cats. Okay. So yeah, I could do something about something I don't like. Well, I could do something about the fact that I love dogs and wish I had one. Okay, there's certain cars that I like. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not saying no to any idea. I'm just writing it down. Okay, and that's the point, is you write down the ideas. They are all possibilities. Do not discredit an idea until you've actually fully investigated it. Okay, or you're coming up with a list. Just write it down. Don't be afraid to write it down. It doesn't mean that that's the one you're going to do, but do not be afraid to write down an idea. From here, what you're going to do is now you actually start to make some decisions. Now you start to make some decisions about what interests you more and what doesn't. Honestly, as much as I love eating and cooking, I'm not really interested in doing a drawing about that. As much as I love my sons, I spend a lot of time with them. I think I want to kind of get away from doing something about them. My sense of humor, I'm really not that interested in. Me being a father, so on and so forth. So now I'm starting to go through, and now I'm starting to say, that doesn't really interest me. Okay? Now, my motorcycle, absolutely, that interests me. You know, that's something that's much more easy to do. My culture and heritage, that's something that I could do. Soccer, wrestling, I could do that as one sport, or I could do it about sports. So they could be separate, they could be together. As you can see here, my first themes, you know, those are ones that we've already kind of explored. So that's where I'm going to actually take my attention for the duration of this video. So, coming up with ideas for this, like the kind of objects that I could draw, okay, or I could bring in. So with archery, you know, obviously there's the bow, there's arrows, there's my glove, you know, there's the target. I actually have, like, you know, sheet targets that I could bring in. Part of that is also as I shoot at a little foam ball, so I could bring that in. I could bring in my my bracer, which is what I use to protect my arm. Okay. Also, I could bring in my quiver. It's not that big, but I could bring that in. I could also bring in like some of the field tips for my arrows. So there's tons of stuff that I could bring in that's not that big, and that's going to help me convey the idea of archery. And that's what you have to think about, is what are you going to be able to bring in to convey your theme. So, moving on. So, constructing your still life. The next thing we're going to do is, once we've established our theme, is we definitely need to figure out what is going to best communicate our idea, our theme, and those objects. So definitely what you have to think about is a mix of 2D and 3D objects. 3D is better. Okay? Yes, you could have a couple 2D things in there. For example, in this still life here, we actually see the sheet music that's in here. Okay? That's important, and that's very important to the idea, and I'll explain that soon. But our objects should be school appropriate. I strongly suggest 3 to 7 objects. Okay, 3 is really kind of like the really bare minimum. It all depends on the size of the objects. So with the 2D objects, again, it could be something that's in the background, something flat, but the main object should be 3-dimensional because it is a still life. As always, we want to make sure that our objects are in fact school appropriate. And 3 to 7 objects is where I left off. I apologize for that. So, like, 3 objects is really the bare minimum. You have to really look at the size of the object. So, for example, if you're doing something about that you were an awesome soccer player and you bring in a bunch of medals and trophies, well, you know, 3 trophies and medals, it kind of gets a little redundant and it gets a little boring. So, what else do you want to say about the sport that you're playing? So, yes, you could start, you know, think about a shoe. You could think about a ball or a small ball, because a size 5 ball would be too big. You could look at maybe that you're a keeper and you want to bring in the goal glove, the keeper gloves. So those are things to think about. Shin guards, jersey, all those kinds of things. Which then brings me to a variation of objects, or a variety of objects, is taking a look at what they're made out of in terms of soft and hard, shiny and dull, you know, different size objects, so on and so forth. So that way it becomes more visually interesting, as well as, you know, you start to get different details and you get different textures. As for the size, it should fit in your backpack. If it doesn't fit in your backpack, then odds are you're not going to be able to bring it to school, much less store it here. Okay? So, moving on. Here's the example of the student's final drawing. So you could see how they constructed a still life, and then their sketches they took and looked at very different points of view, different compositional formats, and settled on this rectangular composition that says something about the performance piece that they were doing during the marching band. Okay, if you take a look at this piece, you could also see the compositional arrangement where her focal point is really down here. And while we could argue that this is a strong diagonal, really it kind of brings us up, brings us down, and back down. So it becomes more of a golden triangle. Here's an example of 2 still life constructed thematic still lifes. So the one on the right was mine about motorcycle. I really focused on lighting more, so it almost becomes more abstract. The one on the right is one of my students about her summer. Here's the drawing that she did from that still life. You could see just how well she did. We are going to be creating 15 thumbnail sketches minimum that are going to be actually about 3 inches by 5, maybe even smaller. We're going to investigate various compositional formats as well as arrangements. Okay, and each sketch should be a different view. So, as always, consider the lighting source, and as with each sketch, there is no shading. We're going to be focusing on contour line. The inner and outer shapes includes highlights and shadows as part of those shapes. Because remember, if you're spending more than 5 minutes on a drawing or on a sketch, it's not a sketch, it becomes a drawing. So we want to be able to make decisions. We want to be able to alter our decisions. We need to be able to adapt quickly. Here's an example of a finished piece. So this is the actual artwork, the completed one. And in here, I want you to take a look at, for example, what this student did in terms of their arrangement of their composition. So first and foremost, what is their compositional arrangement? That's right, it is the rule of thirds. So when you look at, she really put the teddy bear right there in that third. Now, with the other vignettes that I have here, I really want you to focus on the textures that she used and how she created those using the different shading techniques. So with the teddy bear, if you look closely, you can see that she used scribble line on top of rendering and modeling. Okay. With the background in here, in some areas you can actually start to see the line proximity that's occurring. Okay, so it isn't always just rendering modeling, it isn't always just scribble. She's using, or students will use, a variety of different kinds of techniques. Okay, here's another one that a student did where she utilized various shading techniques. Okay, once again, take a look, try to identify what the compositional arrangement is here. What do you believe the compositional arrangement is? Okay, strong diagonal. Okay, one could even argue that there is a golden triangle in here. So again, you're not necessarily always going to get just one compositional arrangement within one artwork, but I definitely want you to be thinking that way. And then take a look at all the different shading techniques. And finally, if you want to see some more still life drawings and see some examples of how students are utilizing different techniques or how other artists are utilizing different techniques in the creation of a still life, go ahead and check out this Pinterest link down here. You're going to have to you're going to have to type it into the search bar, but definitely go take a look. And that's all we have for this. If you have any questions, please email me or ask me in class. I'll see you soon.